At 8:52 p.m. on July 11, 2015, inside Cell 20 of Mexico's Altiplano Federal Penitentiary, a man stood up from his bed and walked toward his shower. 2 cameras tracked him, one outside the cell door, one mounted in the corner of the ceiling. He moved slowly, deliberately. He stepped behind a low concrete partition, barely chest height, that separated the sleeping area from the shower stall. And then he was gone. Not in the way a man leaves a room. In the way a man ceases to exist. 6 seconds. That is what the surveillance footage shows. Joaquin Archivaldo Guzman Lora, 58 years old, 5'5", born in a dirt floor shack in La Tuna, Sinaloa, head of the most powerful drug cartel on the planet, walked into a 1 square meter blind spot and vanished from the most heavily guarded prison cell in Mexico. 30 feet below that shower floor, a modified motorcycle sat idling on steel rails. The tunnel it occupied stretched for 1.5 kilometers through rock and clay, fitted with electric lighting, PVC ventilation pipes, and reinforced walls. At the far end, a half-built house stood in an empty cornfield. That house had no running water. No gas line. No furniture. It had one purpose: to receive the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere. The guards didn't check the cell for another 18 minutes. Here is what you need to understand about Altiplano. This was not some provincial lockup with rusty bars and sleeping guards. This was Mexico's Supermax, the facility built specifically to hold men like Guzman. No windows. Electronic locks on every door. More than 20 security checkpoints between the front gate and any individual cell. Guzman's unit, the Special Treatment Wing, had round-the-clock camera surveillance. He wore a monitoring bracelet. Every door he passed through required biometric clearance from the control room. The Mexican government had promised the world, and specifically the United States, which had been pushing for extradition, that this time, Guzman would not escape. He had done it before, in 2001, reportedly wheeled out of Puente Grande prison inside a laundry cart after paying guards $200,000 in bribes. That embarrassment cost careers, reputations, and what little trust existed between Mexican and American law enforcement. When Guzman was recaptured in February 2014 after 13 years as a fugitive, the government swore it would be different. Altiplano was supposed to be the proof. But Guzman had started planning his exit almost the moment the cell door closed behind him. The operation began with a piece of land. Sometime in late 2014, associates working under the direction of Guzman's wife, Emma Coronel, and his sons, collectively known as Los Chapitos, purchased a small plot approximately 1 mile from the prison perimeter. The area around Altiplano is flat, agricultural, unremarkable. A construction crew began building what appeared to be a simple house. Brick walls went up. A roof was framed. From the road, it looked like any other rural development project. The neighbors noticed workers moving dirt around the property for months, but construction sites produced dirt. Nobody asked questions. Nobody was supposed to. Beneath that house, men with pickaxes and shovels began digging. They could not use jackhammers. They could not use boring machines. The noise would travel through the ground and reach the prison's underground sonar detection system. So they dug by hand, slowly, methodically, moving through clay and rock with tools that would not have looked out of place in a 19th century mine. They worked in shifts. The tunnel needed to descend 33 feet below the surface to pass safely under the prison's foundation and detection grid, then travel horizontally for nearly a mile, then angle upward to meet the concrete floor of one specific shower stall and one specific cell. The margin of error was essentially zero. They were aiming for a target roughly 20 inches by 20 inches, from a mile away, underground, with no line of sight to the surface. This is where the watch comes in. A smartwatch was smuggled into Guzman's cell. How exactly remains debated, though the volume of bribes flowing through Altiplano suggests it was not particularly difficult. The watch transmitted GPS coordinates from inside the cell, giving the tunneling crew the exact location they needed to reach. Even so, GPS accuracy has limits. The engineering required to navigate a mile-long underground passage and emerge within a 3-foot target area was, by any professional standard, extraordinary. Former DA officials later admitted the tunnel surpassed anything ever discovered on the US-Mexico border, and the cartel had built nearly 100 of those. The crew laid steel rails along the tunnel floor as they progressed. A motorcycle, modified to fit the tracks, hauled carts of excavated earth back toward the house, where it was scattered across the surrounding fields. Estimates put the total volume of removed dirt at somewhere between 350 and 379 truckloads. The tunnel walls were reinforced with wooden paneling. PVC pipes fed air from a generator at the house entrance down the entire length of the passage. Electric lights were strung along the ceiling. The tunnel was built to Guzman's exact height, 5 feet 7 inches, so he could walk upright without crouching. It was 28 inches wide. Barely enough for a man's shoulders. And the whole time, the prison itself was providing cover. Altiplano's administration had authorized a pipeline waterproofing project along the facility's perimeter. Drilling rigs operated daily. The noise from legitimate construction masked the sound of illegitimate excavation happening 30 feet below. Guzman heard them coming. For weeks before the escape, he could hear the vibration through the concrete floor of his cell. A low rumble, rhythmic, persistent. Other inmates in the special treatment wing complained about it. They didn't know what it was. Guzman did. He also knew it meant they were close, and that every day the digging continued to increase the risk of discovery. His lieutenant, Damaso Lopez Núñez, had told him it would take time. Guzman was not a patient man. But he understood the math. The tunnel needed to be perfect. One miscalculation, 6 feet in the wrong direction, a wrong turn in the substrata, and the whole operation was finished. Sometime in the first week of July 2015, the crew broke through. The final obstacle was the concrete slab of the shower floor, reinforced with steel rebar. The noise of cutting through it was significant. This is the detail that still haunts investigators. The shower stall was the only blind spot in the cell's camera coverage, designed to protect the prisoner's privacy. But the sound of concrete being cut from below should have been audible to guards stationed just meters away. Either it wasn't, or it was and they chose not to report it. A $2 million bribe to the head of Mexico's prison system, alleged during Lopez's later testimony at Guzman's Brooklyn trial, suggests the latter. On Saturday, July 11th, Guzman chose his moment. Weekends meant reduced staffing. Fewer eyes on fewer screens. That evening, a guard delivered his daily medication. The surveillance footage shows what happened next. Guzman paced. He walked between his bed and the toilet. He sat. He stood. He walked to the shower partition. He crouched. He disappeared. Below the shower floor, a section of concrete had been cut loose, a slab only 2 or 3 inches thick, barely held in place. Guzman pushed it aside and lowered himself through a 20 by 20 inch opening into a vertical shaft. A wooden ladder, crudely assembled from planks and nails, descended 33 feet into darkness. At the bottom, the tunnel opened up. 5 feet 7 inches of clearance, lit by a string of bare bulbs, the air warm and thin but breathable thanks to the ventilation system. The motorcycle sat on the rails, engine running. He climbed on. The ride took roughly 2 minutes. 1.5 kilometers through the earth, beneath the guards, beneath the cameras, beneath the checkpoints and the biometric locks and the electronic doors. The tunnel was not straight. It changed direction twice to navigate underground obstacles, which made the GPS precision even more remarkable. The walls pressed close. 28 inches on either side. The lights cast moving shadows as the motorcycle rattled forward on the steel tracks. The air grew thinner toward the middle of the passage, where the ventilation system was weakest. Then it improved again as the tunnel angled upward toward the exit. Guzman emerged inside the half-built house. No fanfare. No dramatic burst into daylight. It was almost 9 o'clock at night. He climbed another ladder through an opening in the floor of an empty room, stepped over discarded clothing and construction debris, and walked outside. An ATV was waiting. It drove him to a warehouse in a nearby town, where a driver was standing by. From there he was taken to a small airfield. A pilot and a plane were ready. Before midnight, Joaquin Guzman was airborne, heading to the mountains of La Tuna, the same remote village where he had been born 58 years earlier. Back at Altiplano, the alarm had finally been raised. Guards entered cell 20 and found it empty. The monitoring bracelet lay on the floor. Guzman had removed it before stepping into the shower. They found the hole. They found the ladder. They found the tunnel. They did not find Guzman. They would not find him for another 6 months. Joaquin Guzman built an empire on tunnels. He smuggled cocaine through them, moved armies through them, escaped through them. The man they called Shorty understood something about the earth that most people never consider, that beneath every wall, every fence, every locked door, there is ground, and ground can be moved. It just takes time, money, and men willing to dig in the dark. If that story doesn't convince you that the most impossible escapes are built inch by inch, nothing will. Subscribe. Because there are more tunnels to explore, and not all of them have been found. Mexico launched the largest manhunt in its history. 100,000 flyers. 10,000 agents. 48 highway checkpoints. Helicopter patrols across 6 states. A $4 million bounty. None of it worked fast enough. Guzman moved through the mountains of Sinaloa the way he always had. Using a network of safe houses, armored vehicles, and 300 loyal informants who monitored every road, every checkpoint, every movement of law enforcement in the region. He had been doing this for decades. The mountains were his territory, accessible only by single-track dirt roads where any approaching stranger was spotted miles before arrival. On January 8, 2016, Mexican Marines raided a white concrete compound in Los Mochis, a coastal city in Sinaloa. A gunfight erupted. 5 of Guzman's associates were killed. But Guzman himself was not inside. He had escaped again, through another tunnel, this one beneath the house, emerging a kilometer away. He stole a vehicle at gunpoint. Federal police intercepted him on the highway 20 kilometers south of the city. He offered them cash, properties, jobs. When they refused, he told them they were all going to die. They photographed him and sent the images to their superiors, who warned that 40 cartel assassins were already en route. The officers moved Guzman before the gunmen arrived. He was extradited to the United States in January 2017. His trial in Brooklyn federal court lasted 3 months. Dozens of witnesses testified, former associates, lieutenants, even his own Lieutenant Lopez, who described the tunnel, the bribes, the GPS watch, and the role of Guzman's wife in coordinating the escape. On February 12, 2019, Joaquin Guzman was found guilty on all 10 counts. He was sentenced to life plus 30 years and sent to ADX Florence, the federal supermax in Colorado, a facility where inmates spend 23 hours a day in a 7 by 12 foot concrete cell with a single 4-inch window angled to show nothing but sky. There are no blind spots. There are no showers with privacy walls. And the nearest open ground is buried under layers of steel, concrete, and electronic surveillance that make Altiplano look like a county jail. He will die there. Cell 20 at Altiplano is still standing. The shower partition is still in place. The hole in the floor has been sealed with fresh concrete, a slightly different shade than the original, a neat square patch that does not quite match its surroundings. The tunnel below was filled in and collapsed. The half-built house in the cornfield was demolished. But if you drive out to that empty lot on a quiet afternoon, you can still see the foundation lines in the dirt. And at the prison, if you look closely at the shower floor of cell 20, you can see where the old concrete ends and the new begins, a faint seam, barely visible, marking the exact spot where the most wanted man in the world crouched down, pushed aside a slab no thicker than a dinner plate, and descended into the earth. The guards were standing right above it.